you bring, and we can take it from there.
Okay, sure. I just started my career on 2013 after my MCA graduation. I joined with one of the startup service-based company in Bangalore. Basically, it was providing support for different clients across the globe, like Singapore, US, and UK, like that. So basically, I was handling one Singapore and US client. Basically, they had their own data center, and they have many customer deployed their application on it. So basically, our work, we have to monitor, troubleshoot, and maintain all the infrastructure for the customer. This was our primary role. So I completely worked on Linux kind of environment like CentOS, Ubuntu, RHEL. Uh, in that, I have provided application level support, MySQL support, and DNS kind of support. And in infra level, we will provide provisioning and configuration by using Ansible. Again, I got done automation script by using uh, shell script. This was the technical stuff I took from the first company, and nearly I worked 3 years. So then I moved to my second company. It is also a kind of middle level company, and they I was supporting for one of the clients from Australia. uh, Basically they will use the job wise, it's the same as my first company. Apart from that, it's really I managed more than 1,000 plus of servers, and in infra level of configuration management, application level support, monitoring all these services. And I started using AWS. In AWS, I mostly worked on EKS and uh, compute side. Then I used the Terraform for provisioning the infrastructure. So this was the my role in my second company. Then I moved to the company Oracle, so where I worked 5 years, completely worked 5 years. I started in Oracle as a senior system engineer. So it was a multitasking profile. Mainly, my work is divided into three categories. One, the internal dashboard, where we get all the internal Linux system or Windows system alerts or any issues. So basically, we have to troubleshoot and fix immediately since it's a production environment. And then as a cloud backend engineer, basically Oracle, they were using two cloud. One is OCIC and another one is OCI. OCIC basically first gen of cloud. It's mostly like on-prem cloud, on-prem setup. So where I was working in Kubernetes and monitoring those technical stuff I have taken care. Then we were using a monitoring tool called Grafana and Cloud Watchdog. So basically, Grafana we used for uh, uh, the resource monitoring. So if any resource is crunched, suddenly we have to interact with the hardware team to add the newly server. So in that, we will deploy the application by using one of the tool called Shepherd. Shepherd basically an internal tool of Oracle. Is uh, kind of Jenkins tool, kind of Jenkins. It's work like a Jenkins, and basically we will use this tool to patch, deploy the applications, and provision and install some other packages on the particular server. Then basically we will try to add that server into the cluster management, of course, and then I use the version control system with Bucket in Oracle. Then I have an experience on it as well. Then that in terms of cloud, I used Oracle Cloud and OCI as well. I started to work on OCI, that is compute side mostly. Then recently I moved to Capgemini, where I'm just working with one of the client called Bosch, where I'm just doing the CI/CD pipeline, looking for build and deploy mainly. So and again I'm using Ansible for configurations. So this is my short intro regarding my profile. In short, I started as a Linux admin. I slowly moved as an SRE. I just played the role in SRE. I then played the role of DevOps engineer, and as again I was played as a cloud support engineer as well. So these are the main four roles I just gone through in my career.
All right. So you recently started in the DevOps space. Do you have adequate automation
Uh,
exposure?
no, actually, but in the second company itself, I just started into the DevOps, but it's not fully into DevOps because the deployment or the steps, taken care of different teams, and since it was my initial stage, uh, so mostly I was looking for provisioning of infra by using Terraform. Uh, so automation I have done by using Ansible and Terraform and Python. Just I'm sorry, I just about to add that.
Mhm.
I'm just using Python maybe in my last three companies. Um, so yeah, I was into DevOps last so mostly 6+ years.
Okay, cool. Uh, I will ask you like what sort of certifications do you have?
Certification, I never taken since I got my first job without certification, and sometimes I try to do, but uh, in one certification, but I didn't get. Not now, some 4 5 years back. After that, I didn't take any certification. I'm just thinking, just planning to do certification in Terraform as well as in AWS solution architect. These two things I'm just going to do.
Okay, so that's not a problem. Certifications are not really required, but just to get an idea, because people usually do certification in the area where they are strong and they are working. So
Mhm.
just to get an idea.
Okay.
Okay, I wanted to understand what's your understanding about well-architected framework that these cloud providers have.
So well architect in the sense if you are taking any three-tier architecture, of course three-tier architecture application deployment, of course a well architecture one. So basically we have end-to-end deployment and in the application always in a secure manner. The communication to outside, some sort of application is communicated to outside, and the database and of course the application server of course is not communicating outside. We have load balancer. uh, yeah, since of course we have microservices. In terms of cloud provider, it really giving the opportunity to do the microservices. That's one of the main important thing nowadays, since in traditional it's a monolithic, so very difficult to manage. If you want to troubleshoot, basically, you need to stop some functionalities on that. So the customer may face some issues for accessing the websites or applications. But nowadays we have all the microservices, so that if any component need to be replaced, we can particularly work on that, and we can maintain each separate database for each workflow or each services. And of course we have load balancer and load balancer to divert or handle the traffics to the different system, and the auto scaling one of the method in well structured auto scaling security group. So and these are the main components, and it provide a well structured or good three-tier architecture applications nowadays.
So basically, a well-architected application is which has been designed and architected in a following certain practices, good practices.
Yeah, yes, of course.
Do you know what are the pillars of the well-architected framework?
Okay, of course, this year there are some point I can still remember. It reduced the time because well architecture application will reduce the time and a reusability of the code, uh, then easy to manage. So and there is no downtime. I mean, it's a portable and what we call them. So these are, I think, the main pillar. It will
Okay.
reduce the cost and implementation time. Implementation time is very less. if you are going to the best practices.
Okay. 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 You mentioned microservices few times in your discussion. Do you have exposure working on microservices yourself?
No, since the application team, we have an exposure to deploy microservices by using Docker and onto the EKS cluster. But in terms of applications, so really it's handled by different teams, the internal flow, everything. So the deployment in as an infra level or uh, for the DevOps level, we have handled many microservices by using yeah, application load balancer, of course.
So do you know difference between service oriented architecture and microservices architecture?
Microservices architecture basically, yeah, it for each and every component or each and every functions, we have a separate services and of giving a shared data storage. Basically, we will go for particular database for the particular microservices that I understood from microservices in terms of microservices architecture. And obviously, yeah, it acts like single component in your application.
Okay.
So. Uh,
So what doesn't it add a lot of complexity, the microservices itself?
Yeah, but when it compared to a monolithic application, if you are sitting and defining a simple functionality of multiple lines of code and the connections, then integrating the code is quite difficult. But in case of uh, microservices, the complexity is there because of each component we are writing in a single services. So when come to the final, the management and the deployment, I think quite easy. And of course, there are more components. That's why we can see little complexity to manage that.
So what is the motivation for going for microservices? If it
Well,
is
first,
complex to develop, complex to deploy, so many components come up.
yeah. So commonly, I can say in microservices, if you're going for microservices, if one particular service is down, then the first is a customer perspective. Our business is not down. First of all, our business is not. In case of a traditional, if something is go wrong inside a particular application, obviously it will down. That means the customer cannot access. But now in a microservices architecture, obviously customer can access the services. Might be some one or two services may get down or some due to some issues, so that we can fix it. We are not going through the entire microservice or entire part of the application. We are just moving only to the particular services which we need to take care. So I think that one advantage is there, and and the microservices deployment. If you are adding a new feature, so you don't want to go through the entire code and the entire design once again. Where you want to add some features, you can directly just create and you can deploy that. It will work. And of course, the deployment one of the very easy deployment is very easy, and each function can develop separately by the separate team. So that is also kind of advantage. But there are many advantages are there. So complexity
Anything
one.
else? Any other prominent reason that you see?
Uh, Other than that,
Anything on performance or
there is a monolithic or microservices. Since if you are if you're going for microservice, one more thing, if your demand, sometimes you will get more demand. So based on the demand, we can increase increase the microservices for user accessibility. The load balancing kind of things we can use to increase the microservices. Let's say an example, if you are using a Kubernetes microservice, then if customer facing if the customer is increasing or the load is increasing, then obviously we can scale up the things, scale up the applications. And in terms
Okay.
of
Got it. So these can be microservices can be scaled independently.
yeah.
So if your login service, for example, has maximum load, you can scale that, and you don't have to scale other services if required.
Yeah.
Right.
What do you want?
Yeah. I wanted to understand a bit more on, you used AWS, right?
So AWS I used, of course, and I more into Oracle Cloud. As I said, 5 years
Okay,
ago.
let's keep it a little generic then. Let's not go to
Okay, fine.
AWS.
Okay.
You said 3-tier architecture in your question in responding to other question some time back. So what exactly is 3-tier architecture?
In three, basically it comes with a front tier or a front-end application and an application server. We can call it a middleware, and the backend server. That's called a database. So these are the for every whatever the application we are going to deploy. This is the base. So this is the maximum. You will get the architecture. So based on this, all the applications are working.
So
This
you have front end.
Front end, a processing server, or we can call it a middleware or an app server.
Okay. How
We
does
can
this
call it
translate into cloud space, like in infrastructure area?
In infrastructure area, basically, I'll start from the database. Database, obviously, we are not giving access to the outside.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, we will keep this in a private area. Private, we can call in terms of a cloud. We will, of course, we will go for a network VPC or VPN. So in Oracle, it's called VPN. Here, it's called
Yeah,
VPC.
that's
So obviously, so we are going to deploy in a isolated network. We are going to deploy in an isolated network. Then we can call it VPC. Inside that, we need to think. I mean, what services we are going to expose outside, what services we are just going to keep inside. So based on that, we are architecting like public subnet, private subnet. These two things we are just dividing. So it's now this is not, we cannot call it a private or public, but when you are creating some application, you are deploying in an instance or in a EKS cluster, and if you're thinking you want to expose that services outside the user, then basically you will go with one internet gateway. You have to attach with your network. Okay, and then the routing table should be required. Then only that internet gateway will communicate with the public subnet. So we can add that internet gateway into the router, a route table. Then if you attach the route table with the public subnet, one of the subnet you can attach, then we can call it is a public subnet. In that you can deploy your public facing application instance. So obviously now user can access your application outside. Now the second thing, we have one more app server comes in picture. So the app server is not connecting outside. App server is not connecting outside. So we can keep it in, either you can keep it in public, because we are not exposing any port or not exposing any IP to the outside. So that's what you can keep in a public, or you can mostly you can keep in private subnet. So if you are keeping private subnet, we can use the security group to define what you should accept, from which server you should accept the request. So basically, we can provide from internet. I mean that front tier, you will get the request. So basically, the middleware will get the request. So this is one scenario. The next scenario, anyway, we have deployed the database in private subnet. since private subnet required a internet connection. Of course, internet's required because if you are using an EC2 instance for a database, of course, sometimes you to update and manage. So what basically we will do, we will get internet from the public subnet through NAT IP. So you can create a NAT network from public subnet. So now then you have to attach this NAT network to the route table, which should be attached to the private subnet. Now your next network is going to be private. So now you have the connection between these three servers. So front end, the middleware, and the database. On top of that, once you've done this design, then you have to think, there are many components comes to the picture. Like, of course, if your load is increasing, then obviously you require a load balance. Obviously you require an auto scaling or auto scaling mechanism on top of that. So you definitely you have to take these all infrastructure under load under a auto scaling. Auto scale. Then depend on the customer demand. If customer is increasing, you can say this much of you can increase the instance. So based on that, it will scale up and scale down. So auto scaling has been done. Then again, load balancing. So whenever you are getting a request, it should balance the it should balance the traffic between the instances. So on top of that, we are adding a load balancer. So these are the main components comes for a three-tier architecture. On top of that, inside we have to create, of course, some rules to communicate with the server, and IAM rule you're supposed to create, and you have to create a service, policy to interact these instances between these. Security, obviously security, and again you can set up one more firewall to the network, which port you have to allow from the network, that by using NACL. Uh, yes, then again you can use that. Every component you can use it. The AWS is giving SQS, SNS for you can monitor this infra by using a CloudWatch. Otherwise, you can specifically install any particular monitoring tool like Prometheus by using and again you can use Grafana. From that, if you are getting any alert, suddenly you can cut the ticket, or you can use some SNR SQS method to send the message alert. So in this way, since again we can there are many tools still providing by AWS or cloud provider. So depend on our requirement, depend on the security, depend on. So we can add more services to secure, highly feasible and easily accessible three-tier architecture. We can build it.
So basically, in a three-tier architecture, the server which is hosting the user interface goes into public subnet.
Yeah.
Middleware can be in the public subnet or private subnet.
Private subnet, but mostly private subnet.
Mostly private subnet.
Yeah.
And then the database is in
private subnet.
Is also in private subnet.
Yes.
Okay. So there is this not like you don't need three subnets and all. I thought 3 tiers, so 3 subnets.
No, subnets you can create it. See, if you want to run a copy of your say, as I said, we are using one instance to face the customer, but this is not for big application. This is not a single instance, right? So it's a multiple instance. The
Right.
auto scale will do. So that time you can host another subnet as well. So you can create more subnets. You can keep it.
Got it. Got it. Also, on the microservices side, do you have like any experience in securing the microservices?
In our current organization, we have one secure level of authentication. Like we will use SSO mostly.
Mm-hmm.
Some teams are using some JSON based
Right.
authentication they're doing. There are some authentication methods are there, but for us they're given SSO, because when we join with the company itself, they're giving SSO. So same SSO will work to access this.
What is your understanding of the DevSecOps thing that's happening or people are talking about it? And do you also have experience in any of that?
Sorry, in between I lost you. I think I'm not sure whether we have
So, so,
internet
um,
connection.
so I think
Sometimes the
in the
videos.
DevSecOps, uh,
Yeah.
in general. So I understand DevOps people are quite mature nowadays, but now there is a new trend to implement DevSecOps. What is your understanding, and do you also have experience in that?
See, basically, they now in market. I also searched. I got that. DevSecOps. Some kind of roles is going on. But still, what I can understand, what we are giving, most the security. Sometimes we are doing the DevOps culture, like deployment, all the stuff. We are just taking care. But in between, of course, we need a secure handling of these all infrastructure to avoid some illegal access to the applications or vulnerabilities. Those kind of errors we have to avoid for securing the applications. So basically, single word I can say the DevSecOps means they are providing completely a security to our applications. So might be I don't know what methods they are using, but still I can understand. I can understand like what we are doing, what we are presently giving. The same thing they are just taken away and they're when we are doing some deployment. So basically we are giving the credentials as a mask manner, and not directly on the script, not hard coded on the script. We are just using some kind of uh, keys. So it's one of the secure thing how we are just passing the credentials. So this way, they are also suggesting some methods, doing some additional steps to secure the DevOps environment. So
So
this is
what
I'm
are
just telling you.
those steps, and what are those tools that are used in this space?
Obviously, I didn't work with this DevOps SecOps, but in case of if I'm taking, okay, I'm just explaining from my perspective, like, uh, see, if there are an applications running on a cluster like EKS cluster, so basically, different applications they are hosted in the server. I mean, the applications. It should run on different namespaces. So depend on the application, depend on the project, it runs on different namespace. So if I want to give a particular access for someone, like some colleagues, I want to give some access to my peers, like only for list. So basically, I will use to write some rollback access on that access yeah role based access control in Kubernetes. I'll create one user. Either I will use we can do it two ways. Either I will use a new user or ID, or I will take the LDAP user and I just put it on that file. I'll give only list access or view or list. So for someone we can give some other access. So those kind of mechanism we are using in a cluster level of security. So the same kind, there is a many more security should come application level. So if someone want to access some application, they should have um, some logins to access that. So blindly, no one will give the access for anyone. So some SSO, as I previously mentioned, like the JSON-based authentication or based authentication kind of things we can set up to access a particular application or particular environment. So these kind of mechanisms we can used for DevSecOps.
Okay. Also, have you worked on any like what is your cloud spend nowadays? Like in your organization, in what range do you spend monthly?
Uh, See, cloud. So in current project, as I said, I'm just looking the deployment, a testing or a pre-prod environment. So I mostly interacted with EKS cluster, images onto that. Then obviously I'm using Terraform mostly. I'm using Terraform for this project. If required, I can do it via cloud formation as well. Even I just done before this. Uh, then obviously I'm just interacting with the compute side and load balancing.
But what is
Then
your cloud expenditure? You don't know, or that's fine if you don't have, because that's not my actual question.
uh,
How
so
much monthly do you spend as an organization on cloud? Leave it. That's absolutely
uh,
fine. That's okay.
okay.
Sometimes you don't know, or that's not. Have you worked on any cost optimization project or any?
Uh, no, cost optimization I didn't involve.
Okay.
I didn't get a chance. First of all, I think the different teams are there. Yeah, I think I didn't get a chance to this cost optimization.
What if your manager or your management asks you that we are spending 1 million on uh, AWS every month or year or whatever? What would be your 2 or 3 strategies? How would you bring that cost down, maintaining the operations?
Uh, okay, in general terms, the one thing I need to first I need first I need an analyze on that because whether they are using some resources so wastely. Suppose if take an example in a more like e-commerce kind of websites or applications, they are basically not get each and every time the heavy load. Basically, I can suggest them when they will get the peak load on that time you can go for some kind of on-demand instance or some spot instance, uh, or instead of using a very big density of instance style, I will just ask them to move with some basic settings, and which should be able to handle the request. That's the one thing. And a wasted resource we can remove. Uh, then so anyway, the application need to run. We cannot go up to the minimize the application level. Then other fact. Anyway, they are obviously they are getting that much of the billing due to the usage of the resource. That is the only one.
Yep.
I can say. So this is the optimization. We can remove some unwanted and resources, and we can use because in cloud they are providing different services like if you are using one particular instance for so if you are doing a single work in a day, and if you are using that instance in the entire day, that is you are losing the your bill amount. So that case you can go for Amazon Lambda. So serverless. So when you are required, you can execute. When you are not required, you can just close that. So in that you can save your billing. Likewise, we have very serverless services are there. Instead of going with EKS, other ECS services are there, a container service, and one more is serverless. So this kind of suggestion I will take there.
Okay. So when to go for serverless Lambda and when to go for
Uh,
EKS or Kubernetes service? Because
okay. See, suppose in a day, or yeah, let's take an example in a day, you are executing some functionalities. Like if you are taking some data from anywhere, if you are taking some data from some locations, and you have to just copy that into your S3 bucket. In those scenarios, but you are doing yeah, one time or twice in a day, one or twice in a day, you are doing this operation. In this case, you can go for this, Lambda service, because this is serverless. Mean in front end we can say is serverless, but obviously they have the server in AWS, but we no need to bother about that. We don't want to pay for that. So if you are using that at a particular time, so this is you have to pay the amount based on the time you are using, based on some data you are using. So that's it. So instead of you are keeping a separate instance or uh, separate instance for that, you can go for this AWS Dharma. In this way, you don't want to pay the complete amount. just what you're using, you can pay.
Right.
So that's it, Lambda. When we go for EKS, obviously, so let's take an example, microservices. Obviously, it continuously need to run. It continuously need to run so that the customer can access. In those scenarios, we will go for EKS, basically a application deployment.
But with EKS, you mentioned earlier, you can scale up, scale down in
Yeah.
each microservice. So,
Yes.
so even that you can scale down if somebody is not using it, you can scale it to say one instance, and
Yes.
then that won't cost much, right?
Yes, that's what the resource reduction. I mean, reducing the resources. The billing mostly comes from what resources you're using. Right? So
Right.
if you are, that's what initially I said. If you are getting a peak load, because obviously you are getting the benefit. If your load is high in the sense so many users are coming into your application. So that case, if some particularly initially, if you put 3 or 4 instances, if this 4 instance not able to handle, then obviously you have to increase. That way you will get get the cost. Right? But when you are not getting that much of load, don't keep that. You don't need to keep all those 5 instances. Instead, you can reduce to 2 or reduce to 1. Even if one is able to handle the request. So that way we can reduce the cost.
Okay. So what is, you mentioned load balancers earlier in discussion. So what is your understanding of how many types of load balancers are usually there, and what are the
Uh,
major differences?
Obviously, there are application. The load balance are different types. Application load balance is there. Network load balance is there. And one more gateway load balancer is there, but I've not used that one. And one is the classic load balancer. So the major difference is for microservices or path-based routing. Basically, you will use application load balancer, and because with the microservices, if you're accessing one URL, it will go to one service. The next URL it will go to other service. So based on the path, you can just route it. But basically, it will use HTTP and HTTPS protocol. For network-based routing, obviously it's based on some port. It will route based on some port. It will route it. Then classic load balancer. So mainly what we are using the classic and uh, application load balancer. The class load balancer is a traditional one, and we can install the monolithic application on it. So these are the 4 major type of load balancer in cloud.
So what is the main difference between an application load balancer and network load balancer you mentioned? I didn't get that.
Okay, application load balancer we will use for mostly microservices
Okay.
because it's a path-based routing. Let's say an example. If you are going, I'm just giving an example. I think Facebook.com. After that, you're just putting /home. It will go to one server. Next, Facebook.com/user. It will go to other service. So it's a path-based routing will happen because it's work with HTTP and HTTPS protocol only.
Mhm.
So this is mainly used for microservice. Basically, network load balancing, it will not use HTTP or HTTPS protocol. It mainly use TCP and UDP protocol. So basically, if you want to route, if you have to go somewhere, basically you will use the port number. So the use cases are very less, enterprises like, but it's applicable mostly in network side. I just think it's a network side, and in enterprise level, we are mostly using application load balancer. I think instead of mentioning this part in application load balancer,
Mhm.
we are mentioning port number in network load balancer.
Okay. And you know why this difference? Why can't NLB have path-based routing?
By design itself, I think it only support for TCP and UDP protocol. Uh, that's what I feel because I never used this network load balancing. So mostly I work with these kind of network, sorry, application and traditional. That means classic load balancer.
Okay. Okay. No worries. And how about some application deployment patterns like blue-green deployment?
canary deployment is there.
Mhm.
But mostly we are using blue green and canary deployment. In comes to microservices architecture, there are many. Recreate we can use it. Then uh, rolling update we can use it. So these are the main
But what is the
applications.
difference? What are they, and what is the main difference?
Difference in blue green, basically, if you are running, let's take an example of 10 services are running for your application. If you want to update, you can specify some certain percentage. So out of 10 servers, it will go to update some 3 servers. So once it's up, it's fine, then it will go to other next to update. That is the deployment I ever seen and I mostly used. Then this is then one more is their rolling update, same kind of canary. So here what we do, if suppose we have 10 microservices are running, and if you want to update some versions, so basically there is a percentage. Based on the percentage, we can say if you are mentioned 50-50, so initially it will go to take the 5 servers out of 10, then try to update. So the meanwhile, user can access their application without any issues, because other 5 servers now, through the load balancing, it will traffic that, it will route the traffic. So it will update. Once everything is run, then it will touch the other one. Sorry, I
Sorry,
didn't get.
I was on mute. Sorry.
Okay, fine.
I wanted to check on the RPO and RTO. Usually these terms are used in discussions. So do you understand these?
Uh, RPO and request time. I don't know. So many terms I hear like SLM, uh, uh, service level agreement, and SLI. Uh, then RTO, I just somewhat I just heard. So I'm not able to recall now. I think RTO.
So basically, why do you use blue green in some scenarios? So blue green at very high level, I understood was what you mentioned. You will have two environments,
Yeah.
right? So
Not two environment. What example I can say? Suppose okay, if all the services running in Nginx or Apache web server, right? We will take Apache web server. Let's take an example. V1 is the version now. It's running fine. So later they released V2. Now I want to update V1 to V2. So this scenario, update the web servers, or again, if you are already using one version of your application, now you are implemented with other some extra feature you added. So you want to implement the new one. So basically, you will go for this blue-green deployment strategy. So basically, to deploy your newly created application on that. So there are many advantages. So if it will initially when you upgrade, the meanwhile the user can access your application which is old, which is running the old, keep on their accessing. So after certain time, if we find okay the deployed application is working fine, anyway before we implement, we will test in our test environment or pre-prod environment, but still we will do a simple test and setup. Once it's done, then it will go for live, right? If there is any issue, we can just roll back it.
right.
So that is the main
So
advantage
you
of
will roll back means your old environment will be live.
will be live. Yes.
So that means you have two environments.
Now, while updating, we have a two environment. While
Okay.
updating, we have a two
Okay.
environment.
Once it is
Suppose
stable, then you will get rid of that environment.
yes, yes, automatic will go because that is a blue green deployment. So it will not take the entire list of the services.
Right.
It only takes a particular amount of services. Like let's say there's a percentage 70-30. So 70% will work the previous and the old application. The 30% of service, I mean, it will update. So if
Mhm.
it's everything working fine, then it will automatically come to the next 70% divided by in this manner, it will work. So once everything is fine, it will work from the new application. If you are facing any issues, your old applications continuously running, right? You can just roll back the 3 server or 3 services will roll back to old one. So then we can fix the bugs if you have any bugs or any errors or something you want to clear. You can clear again. You can try to figure that.
Okay. Okay. Have you ever performed any disaster recovery activity in
Uh,
your organization?
Yeah, in cloud, in terms of cloud, I didn't involve because I didn't get the chance to disaster recovery or anything because uh, so I faced the things like uh, some data may lost, not due to disaster something, but some activity their data may lost suddenly, their data breakdown. So those cases, we have done some restoration from the backups.
Mm-hmm.
So either it's in a cloud, they have a backup in Oracle, but in current organization, I have not done. But in a previous organization, I have done because initially every day some customer, let's take an example, some kind of standard chartered or kind of customer, they used to take a snapshot every day, and someone will keep some backups. The name I forget the backups name. It's keep on every
Mm-hmm.
some time of time it will sync with the original server and it keep on its backup. So
Right.
if you lost next minute, you can restore from the previous snapshot or disk. Those kind of activities I have done. Even some of my from my first and second companies, basically they called independent tool called R1 Soft. So it is also keep their last 20 days, whatever the representation you are giving, that much of day backups, it keeps that much of backup. So which day backup you want, you can restore it. So this is not a big disaster or something like that. It is some kind of losing their data due to some.
How will you
Uh,
design an application so that if something uh, disastrous happens in that area where your servers are hosted, how would you design so that you don't lose the data?
so here, there are many methods we can use it in cloud itself. We have a cross-region backup we can do. Cross-region backup we can do. There is a snapshot, also one kind of solution, but it's not a completed best solution. But some sort of amount of data, with some level of data you get. So
Mhm.
because every day you are taking snapshot, you're wasting your cost or those tips. That's not a good practice. But if you are running a high demanded and highly a wanted application, obviously you can go for that for this kind of snapshot. Then obviously you can take a cross region backup, or so you can keep your clone. You can make it your cloning. Uh, so in one from another region.
Mhm.
This way you can just keep your data
So, but
persistent.
how will you decide how frequently you should have the backup?
So that is uh, so that is still a customer requirement. If they are running a very sensitive, highly wanted application, you can go for hour based or a day based.
Mhm.
Sometimes some customer will go for the weekly based. So I noticed this kind of scenarios what
So you
customer
will
is
talk
using.
to customer and you will tell them that if you want hourly backup and something
Yeah.
happens, then 1 hour of data can be lost.
Yes, even that name I just forgot it. Continuous backup. Also, continuous backup option is there. Continuous
Okay.
backups. Each and every data will be there up to the what is there in the lost data. Everything will be here, so
Okay.
that you
So
can
there will be
clone.
a working copy in the other somewhere other
Yes,
else. Okay. But then
yes,
that's a
yes, yes, yes. For the
duplicate.
same working copy.
That will increase the cost, right?
Yes, obviously, if you are using any backup strategy, of course, it will go for a cost. It will go for the cost. But there is one more method. So I'm not getting the name. That's what I'm thinking. It's a continuous backup of the uh, It's not a snapshot. Snapshot basically.
Synchronization, something synchronization and all.
So synchronization, yeah, synchronization. It will. It's taking the copy of the exact what you are having. Synchronization.
Right.
What you of course in database kind of thing. So obviously we go for the synchronization because that very sensitive database. So
So
for
how do you
synchronization.
find the balance? Like if you have 4 or 5 different customers, one is very cost sensitive,
Okay.
one is like a very they want the stability and they don't want to lose data. So how will you find the balance between these two customers?
Uh, so both we can suggest best backup technologies here
Mhm.
in cloud. So there are different approaches are there, like uh,
Okay,
so
but another example, like suppose one of your customer is operating in 3 different regions.
okay,
Say they are operating in Europe, US, and Australia.
okay,
So where will the database be?
okay. So in this case, where this is depends on the end user, we can keep it.
The users are from 3 different countries.
Okay. So we can here we can use either we can use a master slave setup, or you can keep the database in 3 different regions.
But how will they sync with each other?
Uh, it is the cloning or synchronization. We can use it to uh, do this. I mean, once you made the synchronization between these two, 3 databases. So one you can made for in EKS, basically in EKS cluster, in this setup done like there is many database server like master slave setups. So one only from one master server only you get the uh, request or write request. The remaining 3 will access the read. So in this kind of so the same scenario we can implement in cloud like we can do the master slave setup in 3 different regions.
Okay. Yep, makes sense. Yep, true. So the other terms that we were talking, right? RTO is recovery time objective and RPO is recovery point objective. So
Okay.
you in a way answered those questions, but not the typical definition point of view. But you understand from at high level.
Yes.
I think
Uh,
that's pretty much I wanted to cover, unless you have some questions.
so I have the question like I'm curious to uh, get some information about how what kind of infrastructure presently using here and how is the work will be.
So we are hiring for a senior cloud and DevOps architect.
Okay.
So the typical, the infrastructure is slightly complex. We have on-premise environment, and we also have multiple cloud environments. We are not restricted just to AWS
Oh, okay.
or
Okay.
Azure. So
Yeah.
multi-cloud environment, and
Okay.
all the questions that I asked were quite relevant, like reduce the cost,
Yeah.
bring the security, um, the 3D architecture. So all those are relevant areas. But
Okay.
the main roles and responsibilities would be to design applications and infrastructure um,
Okay.
to meet these all the well-architected framework pillars. So from an architect, we would expect that he will, uh, his design and architecture would be tight across
Okay.
all those pillars.
Yeah.
It will fulfill all those requirements of a well-designed, well-architected application. So it will not cost much. It will be secure, performance, operational excellence. All those areas will be covered.
Okay.
So
Okay.
and then uh, lot of debates, discussions on to what should be the architecture for the next set of applications that we are developing. how we can improve on them, any new tools and technologies coming into the market. So doing analysis and research on those, and then coming up with recommendations,
Yes, got it.
that sort of thing.
Okay, got it, got it.
Anything else that you want to
Uh,
ask?
no, I think I'm fine with your answers. And if you any feedback you want to give, I can give.
That's
If
fine.
you,
I'll share the feedback. I had a good discussion, so I believe you do understand these
yes,
concepts. I
yes,
will
yes, I got it.
share a detailed feedback.
Yeah, sure, sure.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks, Desh.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
Yes, bye.